And I'm here with Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. Let's start with what your Republican colleague Lamar Alexander said very late last night in a statement. I'm going to read part of it to you. He said, "It was inappropriate for the president to ask a foreign leader to investigate his political opponent and to withhold United States aid to encourage that investigation. When elected officials inappropriately interfere with such investigation, it undermines the principle of equal justice under the law." Do you agree with him that what the president did was inappropriate?
It was unartful, for sure, but I don't think that he did anything wrong. No, I think Lamar makes an interesting point, and what I like about what Lamar is saying is he illustrates the diversity of opinion within a range that leads to the same conclusion. And I think that's the honest answer from him. I think he drew a conclusion, the same conclusion I'm going to draw, but I probably don't share that harsh a view,
right, because
criticism.
You called it inartful. I mean, he's very harsh,
right,
saying it's not impeachable. But he says flatly that the House made its case already successfully, that there was a quid pro quo.
But they didn't make a case for impeachment.
But do you just stay on the quid pro quo, whether
Sure.
it's impeachable? Do you agree with that?
I don't. I don't think that, I'm not saying there wasn't a quid pro quo, but I don't think they made a compelling case that they could prove that it was a quid pro quo. We could argue that whether or not John Bolton would have secured that conviction or not, but again, I think you still have the same outcome, which is part of the formula. We all have to consider whether we want to extend this or not, because there are other ramifications.
Well, okay, so if you're not, it sounds like you're not totally convinced that the House Democrats couldn't have made that argument with John Bolton. So why not hear from John Bolton then? Why not vote yes when this vote comes this afternoon?
I think there's a couple of reasons, because contrary to what Adam Schiff may say, calling one more witness doesn't mean we're only going to have one more witness. That would be so unfair to the president and to his team to not let them call any witnesses while Adam Schiff goes on a fishing expedition in the Senate. Second of all, the ramifications of going through this and still not removing the president means the Senate doesn't work, means we don't continue with legislating. It means the divide gets wider, not narrower, and there is an election in a few months. So let's get on with the work of the people and put this behind us.
So let's go back again to the crux of what Senator Alexander said, which is that he thought it was inappropriate, and kind of game it out. It sounds like, based on what he's saying, and you're sort of saying, it's okay for any president to make the ask that the president made, asking a foreign leader to investigate his political opponent and withhold aid in the meantime. So what happens when the next president does that?
That argument in a vacuum is one thing. But in the broader case, it's very different, because remember, the political opponent that you speak of was the vice president of the United States, perhaps caught up in corruption in a very corrupt country with a son working for a very corrupt company. That's not irrelevant.
We know when you were in the House, you were in the Republican leadership.
They never want to get into that. I know.
But you didn't investigate. If it was such a big deal, the Republicans, when they had the majority, they would have investigated that. If that was it wasn't until the former vice president became a real potential opponent.
But other things happened as well. There's a new leader, president of Ukraine, who ran on an anti-corruption platform, who had then just recently won a majority in parliament. And so there was a moment and an opening and an opportunity. And that gets to the argument, what was the motive of the president? And then we have to get inside of his head. And we're talking about impeachment. Remember.
So one last question. What does your gut tell you about Senator Murkowski?
Yeah, my gut tells me that she probably will be a no vote on more witnesses. However, you talk about Lamar Alexander and his thoughtfulness. Lisa's equally thoughtful, and Susan's thoughtful, Mitt is thoughtful, and I think everybody else that have a different opinion on various things are all thoughtful. And that's why I tend not, especially in a situation like this where we all have all of the information. It's not like there's an expertise in a particular committee or something like that with legislation. We all have all the information. I trust the integrity of everybody who comes to the same conclusion and who comes to different conclusions.
Senator, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.